if you watch the video from the last section, you'll remember that I told you the easiest way is just to identify that pattern. A squared minus b squared equals a plus b times a minus b. And I taught you that whole 0x, is a way to go about it in more the traditional sense of how we factor. But things get a little bit more difficult in this section, and it's much easier to identify this pattern. So what we're going to do this first, we have 49x squared minus 9. So if I could rewrite that as two things being squared, obviously the minus sign in between, so we're good there. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. So I want to write it as two things being squared with the minus sign in between, right? That's basically this form, a squared minus b squared. So something squared minus something else squared. So if I were to rewrite this, well, 7 squared is 49, right? So 7x goes there. And then 3 squared is 9, so the 3 will go there. So if I were to continue the factoring of this, it would be 7x plus 3, 7x minus 3. So there we go, just like this. All right, so looking at this one, same idea here. This could be rewritten as 3 squared, then we got the minus, which is good, and this could be written as 5x squared. So then the factored format is 3 plus 5x, 3 minus 5x. Here's one that's a little bit different. So I can't write this as something squared. Now usually my approach would be to do the square root of 3x squared, which technically you can do because square root of 3 squared is just the 3. But actually remember, when we factor, what we have to do first is see, is there something in common that we can factor out of both of those? And the answer is yes. So we're going to start with that, and that is a 3. I can divide a 3 out from both of those. So I can rewrite this 3x squared minus 147 as 3 times x squared, and I'm going to go ahead and do 147 divided by 3 is 49. Then from there you could see that x squared minus 49 would be the x plus 7, x minus 7. And I should have gone over that a little more detail, because remember that x squared, that's something squared there, and then this would be 7 squared, and you get that minus. So I'm rewriting this as x plus 7, x minus 7. Using that form from earlier. So your answer would just have the 3 in the front. That's it. So same thing, just with the 3 out front. And this one here, same idea. We're going to go ahead and factor out the 2. So I'll get 2x squared minus 162 equals 2 times x squared minus 81. And that's going to be 2 times x plus 9, x minus 9. So it's not too bad if you do it recognizing the patterns. If you went ahead and wrote the 0x in between, it might be a little more difficult, a little more challenging to go through those. But if you're just finding this pattern here, it makes things a lot easier. Now, I think coming up to the next section with perfect squares, there sometimes tends to be a little bit of confusion. And that's why I was saying try to go back to figuring out that pattern. Why is it that we only end up with 2 terms? Is because this is a plus, this is a minus, cancels out that middle term. So if you go back to that part where we're distributing and doing all the FOIL and everything, I told you, recognize the patterns. That's going to make it easier to remember, okay, in this situation I do the difference of 2 squares, and then when we get to the perfect square, how that's going to look as well.